to Suzanne to get started.
All right, thanks, Mike, and thank you guys all for taking the time and being here with us today. Like Mike said, my name is Suzanne Trinh. I work for General Dynamics Mission Systems, which is just one of the 10 business units in the GD family. I've been with General Dynamics for 10 years now, and actually supply chain is my second career. So before that, I did accounting and finance for about 16 years. I worked in various industries, either for small businesses or with small businesses. So I definitely understand your struggles. I'm an advocate for you within the company, so very happy to be here with you all today. So the goal of the panel today, right, is to learn how to work on DoD contracts. So as you guys know, there's a lot that goes into it, right? Terms and conditions, the FAR, the DFARs, right? QA requirements, you name it, it's there. But the biggest hurdle we see is cybersecurity. So if suppliers are not cyber secure, it's very difficult to work with you because we can't share drawings with you. So if you're making something, you need to be able to use the drawing to do it. So we want to be able to do that, but you have to be cyber secure in order to do that. So if you were here with us last year, we actually led a panel as well. And so we did that panel with Synagex Plastics, which is one of our suppliers. And so Rob had talked about his experience, right, from the voice of the supplier of becoming cyber compliant. He worked with Synagex, who helped him along that process through MAIR-MAC. We also had Lily there, and she was talking about what MasTech is doing in terms of grant money to help you guys offset some of those costs. So this year on our panel, we have a little bit of a change here. So we have Suzanne Pagan, so she's from MAIR-MAC Machine, also another one of our suppliers. And she's going to talk about her journey working with Synagex and MAIR-MAC to get her score from a negative 111, and now she's going to be 110 in July. So we also have Pete. He's from Synagex, extremely knowledgeable. He's going to be breaking down the CMMC requirements, their process for working with suppliers like you. They actually break it down and make it pretty easy to do, and all of that. And then we have John here, which is great. So John heads up the Mass Cyber Center. He's going to be talking about what Massachusetts is doing to help you guys with cyber. So before I hand off the baton to Pete and John, I did want to share some information about General Dynamics and GD Mission Systems specifically. So we are the 5th largest defense contractor in the United States. We're a $47.7 billion organization. We have 100,000 employees worldwide. And like I mentioned before, we have 10 business units in 4 sectors. We do run independently. The ones you guys are probably the most familiar with here in the Northeast is Electric Boat out in Connecticut, Bath Iron Works out in Maine, us, Mission Systems, we have 4 locations here in Massachusetts, and then GDIT as well. So about Mission Systems specifically, we have 12,000 employees. We have about 7,300 suppliers worldwide. We work on about 3,000 different programs and different contracts. And we work with about 2,400 small businesses, which 10% are based here in Massachusetts. So John and Pete, before we get into the rest of the panel discussion, I was really hoping that you could share with the team some about the cyber threats and stuff that you guys see going on and why this is so important for the DoD.
Sure. I think you had an example you were going to share.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So again, John Petrozelli, I'm the director of the Mass Cyber Center. We are part of MasTech, just like Lily. We're one of the 7 or 6 divisions or 7 divisions soon of MasTech. So we look at a variety of the threat reports that are happening throughout the world, also Massachusetts. I have 17 years with the FBI prior to coming over here. I was also with the managed services provider for 2 years. So it gave me a unique perspective on like what the threats are and what they really are to us, with the Chinese and the Russians and how they basically infiltrate themselves into different programs and then steal the technology and bring it back to China, and it's gone. So so part of what we're doing is we try to assess what are the threats that we're facing, and we've broken it down based on reports over the last couple of years into 3 vectors of threats. The human element, which 70% of cybersecurity attacks have a human element. It could be something as simple as me wanting to send an email to Suzanne and then sending it to Susan or to Pete. But those misdelivery actually count as a data breach and have to be reported depending on what data was lost. That's the easiest way of like trying to root that out. When you root that out, now you've still got to deal with phishing and those types of threats that come in where the human is duped through some type of social engineering. So we're looking at how to stop threats against that. The next big way of getting into systems are system intrusions, which is like ransomware, other types of malicious software or malware, like keyloggers, where someone can install something onto your computer and then capture your screen. They can capture your keystrokes and things like that. So system intrusions is the second threat vector that we're looking at protecting against. And then third are the internet-facing vulnerabilities. So if you have a website, if you have a firewall that's reaching out to the internet, if you have some kind of public-facing service like an Office 365 or something like that, they all have vulnerabilities, and hackers know those vulnerabilities sometimes before the manufacturers do. So those are called zero-day vulnerabilities. And then there's also end-day vulnerabilities. So we've designed a bunch of programs at the state level to try to help people to understand these threat vectors, but more importantly, try to set you up to protect yourselves against the threat vectors. And we'll talk about that throughout the course of this.
So yeah, you mentioned some of the vulnerabilities, like even in the Microsoft 365 environment, where we're seeing a lot of focus right now is getting both on kind of the technical side and going after the end user. You guys working in your Microsoft 365 convince you to try to load an application that could be something that looks like a helpful plugin to the application. Some systems are locked down enough that it wouldn't allow any user in your Microsoft 365 environment to do that. But if you are opened up in the environment to be able to pull that off, you could have introduced a vulnerability that then allows someone else, a threat actor, to see what your emails are coming and going into your mailbox. Might not give them the power to send anything through there, although some do, but even that power of seeing that email communication can get them to do things like, all right, we'll get you to submit an invoice to a different organization, or I know what your invoicing structure looks like, so I'll send you what looks like a similar invoice for that organization, get you to pay some amount of money just based on what your role is and what you're actively working on as projects. So not super technical, but can manipulate people into paying fairly large sums of money.
Yeah, so it's pretty scary out there, but I feel very confident that we have this team, you know, of us to be able to help you guys through that. So Pete, could you walk through the process? So let's say I refer a supplier over to you, or a supplier comes through Mass MEP. How does that work? What can folks expect, and how does that tie into the CMMC requirements?
Sure. I'd like to just start with who's in the room is familiar with CMMC. And do you know anyone know what the acronym actually stands for? I'll give you something if someone even takes a shot.
Cybersecurity maturity model certification.
Yes, we'll have to give him the water bottle. Very good. But that core of that, cybersecurity, that's what we're talking about. So the DoD, I'm gonna go back in history a little bit, just to, how did we get to where we are today with CMMC? This was all built off in this 800-171 framework. That's the cybersecurity framework or model that we're working off of. 110 controls or practices that show you what needs to be implemented in your environment to help protect that environment. Like in 2017, the DoD started putting in contract, or your primes, it's written into contract how you need to meet those NIST requirements. And if you're working in defense space right now, you've been agreeing to that since 2017. So that could be scary. Like, okay, what is this NIST 800-171? What have I been agreeing to? It was self-attestation. So Suzanne had to say, yes, we're doing that. Many organizations didn't have a strong grasp of those 110 practices, and are we really doing that? They would pass it off to IT, and IT would skim down through it and yep, we're doing all these things. So realizing that we didn't have a strong understanding of who actually had this in place. People are saying they're doing it, are they really doing it? We moved forward to implementing a certification process, so that CMMC cybersecurity maturity model certification. The intent is stop the self-attestation if you're handling federal contract information and CUI, control the unclassified information. You'll be required to have some level of certification in that process. So how we have partnered with Mass MEP for about 5 years now, maybe a little longer. We provide gap assessment work. So we take that NIST 800-171 framework, work with the clients to just do the assessment portion. So this is what you've been agreeing to do, is self-assess your organization and say what's being met. We help you better understand that language that's written in there, walk through it with you and potentially your IT, internal IT resource or an external IT provider. So get that kind of translate into plain English, walk you through that, give you a score. So the DoD is going to be looking for what they call SPRS scoring, Supplier Performance Risk Scoring. That score gives them a risk score of how much of that 110, those 110 controls have you really implemented in the organization. So based on that score, they can get an idea of, okay, how strong are you right now? Could we start working with you? Like General Dynamics, I think, has, is it a 90 now? 90 SPRS score. So in that scoring, you have to have a 90 or above to start new work with General Dynamics, and other primes have similar controls in place. So Mass MEP brings us in, introduces us to the client. We start at that level, just have a 1-day assessment, so 6 to 8 hours being on site, and go through all those 110 controls. Take some time. It's about a 4 to 6 week process at that point to just review all the notes and the data that we collect during that assessment. Come back to you with what that score is, system security plan. So the system security plan lists all 110 controls and what the status is currently, whether it's met or not met. The not met controls go on a plan of action and milestones. That plan shows a General Dynamics what's not yet being met, but what your plan is to move toward completion on those, and it could be dates and time when you want to close those out. Tracking time, I assume, and
Yeah.
I don't want to go too long, but then, so we are an MSP, we provide IT services for clients, but with our relationship with Mass MEP, we come in as a very neutral partner. We work closely with your IT staff, like I said, to provide those details and reports, project plans for how to move forward, and then pass that off to the client. It's up to them whether they're going to continue to work internally or ask for additional support through that process.
And so a lot of our suppliers that have worked with Synagex and Mass MEP say that it's really great that you guys break it down week by week. Like, here's your plan for the week. So it's bite-sized chunks versus like, oh my gosh, I have to do like a million different tasks.
Right.
So, which makes it more manageable. And I know, Suzanne, you'll talk about that as well.
Yes. So I've been with MAIR-MAC machine for 27 years. It's been a little tiny machine shop in Brockton, and the owner's a service disabled veteran, and he actually had a massive stroke about 7 years ago. So he hasn't been in the building since. He's up there. No children to run the company, so I've kind of just been doing it the same way he always did all the years. We needed to be compliant for General Dynamics, one of our biggest customers, and I thought we don't even have an IT company. Well, I did an IT company. We were 10 people, only one in the office. The rest were machinists in the shop, I did all the, excuse me, all the payables, receivables, bookkeeping, ordered, materials, everything. And over the years, I took on HR, I would get the health insurance, we grew. We grew really big, it was really terrific. We were buying, 7, 8 machines at a time, and, stuff was really good back in the early 2000s. We were doing a lot of semiconductor stuff, and Alfred Communications was one of ours. We did a nice satellite dish. It was huge, really good stuff going on. Well, when General Dynamics told us that we needed to have a score up to 90, I thought I better call somebody, because I'm not an IT person. I went on the hunt for, I found a local one. They seemed great. They told me they had information, plenty of knowledge on NIST and CMMC and DFARS. It turns out they didn't. And then there was a bit of a nightmare. This was in 2021. For 4 years, my beginning score was minus 111, and they brought me up to minus 98 in 4 years. Meanwhile, General Dynamics is saying, hey, you need your score up, and I said, I don't know what else to do. I've contracted 3 and 4 different companies now. The one MSP, they did not do all of the parts of NIST. There's many, many different components to CMMC, with the POEM, like you said, and the penetration testing, and there's many, many things. One company couldn't do this, another company couldn't do that, so I have several contracts. It was a nightmare. They wouldn't communicate with one another. I realized I just couldn't, this wasn't working. I wasn't getting my score where it needed to be. And I did reach out to my buyers at General Dynamics. I really wasn't expecting too much as far as help, but I needed to do something. And Suzanne reached out to me, and she said, you have to get in touch with Rick at Mass MEP and Synagex, Peter and John from Synagex, and they're gonna help you out. I had no idea there were grants available. It was really, really just, it changed everything. They were very patient with me. I had contracts to cancel. I started doing lots of Zoom calls and gathering all this information that I needed in January of 2024. It took me about 6 months to cancel all of my contracts that I had with all of these other little sub-companies. And in June of last year, I signed with Synagex, and Rick at Mass MEP helped me get some grants to fund it. I had already spent quite a bit of money investing in these other companies to help me with the NIST. Well, again, we began with John at Synagex at negative 98 in June of last year, and he had said he hoped by the end of the year, this year, I'd get to my 90, and we were at my 90, and we're currently at 103, and by the end of this year, we will be actually, I think next month, I think we won at the end of July, we'll be at a perfect score of 110. It was quite, it was quite a hurdle. It really was. There was a lot of things in between that I just didn't understand, and working with them and breaking it down, like you had said, Suzanne, where it was just weekly. It's weekly. We have a conference call weekly. We check off these things that have been done. Another thing was, we're only 10 people in the shop, and I'm the only, I'm gonna call myself an administrator, I suppose. Nobody knew how to use computers. They didn't have a software system when I started 27 years ago. So when they, Synagex actually called and said, oh, you gotta get your team together. And I giggled to myself because I'm the team. I'm the team. Let me get HR. Oh, that's me. Let me get, let me get accounting. Okay, that's me. Yeah. All right. Receiving. Yeah, I do it. Yeah. Shipping. Yeah. Yeah. We've been assembled. You name it. I do it. So I thought, how am I going to be able to do this? I don't have the manpower. I don't have time to do everything I do. I'm going to have to hire an employee. I mean, we're only at 10, that's just not realistic to hire a full-time employee, just to do CMMC and then have to learn all about that. It worked out really, really well, and if it weren't for Suzanne, your support, and Rick at Mass MP, and patience of Synagex, and John, to get me through it, we wouldn't be doing business with General Dynamics anymore, and we've been doing business with them for 35 years, so. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, this is so exciting. I was on the website, on General Dynamics website, and I came across that, and I had one on my desk, we make that, and I called in the guys from the shop, I said, look, it's on GD's website. We make it, look. And we were just so excited that we finally made GD's website, and there were other parts on there that we make as well. It was really, really cool to know that we're just a 10-man shop, you know, in Brockton, in business for 35 years, and we make real things, and we have real issues, and time is, you know, of essence, cost is, of course, of essence, and we made it through. Yeah, patience of GD, thank you. It took a while for us to get there, but being led in the right direction just really, really saved us, so.
Yeah, you guys are very fortunate here in Massachusetts. So I actually live in California and I deal with all the states. Massachusetts is one of the best states in terms of resources for small businesses. You guys have it very, very well here. Other states, when I say, what kind of grants do you have available? Do you have money available? No, they have no money. You're in Minnesota, they have no money for you. If you're in California, actually, they have no money for you either. But here in Massachusetts, you guys do have these grant opportunities. So I think that's really awesome. So segue over to grants and like all the awesomeness that Massachusetts is doing for you.
Sure.
John, if you can
Sure.
talk about that. It's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, so I've been there for 2 years. This program started before me, but because of my managed services provider experience, I kind of tweaked it a little bit for Massachusetts. So we have a state subsidized program that we're building out that provides cybersecurity services at a reduced cost from the private sector. So we did this through a nonprofit. We built the nonprofit using nonprofit and ranges. So we call this our SOC range initiative. SOC is Security Operations Center. I won't go into the range part today, but we've built ranges where people can upskill their talent at a bunch of different state schools and community colleges throughout the state. But the SOC program is really what could help small businesses. So a little bit of background on that. When I came from the MSP, when I applied to this job, I was like, we should really build almost like a state-funded MSP that is producing the same quality or better capability than the private sector and charge like a third of the price. And they're like, oh yeah, that's what we're doing. So I was like, oh really? All right, well let's see. So so what we've done is we created a nonprofit called CyberTrust Massachusetts. We've so far put about $8 million into that program. And what that allowed them to do as a private nonprofit is to negotiate good prices with a group called Sentinel One, which is like CrowdStrike, Sentinel One, and what they've been able to do is negotiate based on economies of scale. So we had said, hey, we're going to bring in probably 10 to 20,000 endpoints in the first couple of years of this. We want your best price, and they gave us almost all-in pricing for what they were doing. So at the managed services provider, we used to charge $15 to $20 per month per computer for a lesser version of Sentinel-1, and the nonprofit is charging $7 for all the services that the Sentinel-1 program can provide with respect to asset management, software discovery, IP discovery, like internet protocol discovery, IoT devices on your network, and then the actual endpoint detection and response tool. So it's a really, really great price for what we're able to do, and we're doing that with state funding. Now, we are coupling that with a grant program. So that's what I was going to talk to you about. It's called the Cyber Resilient Massachusetts Grant Program. It's through what Secretary Silva talked about through the business front door, but you can also just apply to it directly going to our website at masscybercenter.org. It's up to $25,000 for a small business, a nonprofit, or a municipality to harden, basically sign up for this managed detection and response through this nonprofit. The nonprofit is a competitor with MSPs in the state. A lot of MSPs, like we actually have a good relationship with Synagex, but a lot of the MSPs hate us because we're deflationary in the state, because they're like, what the hell? You know, I'm like, well, you guys had the opportunity to do this and you didn't, so we are. So we haven't made good friends in that space, but we have made good friends elsewhere. So this SOC itself has grown to we'll have about 7,000 endpoints in there by September. So it's a size of a medium-sized MSP. And those are mostly municipal endpoints, so those are a lot of cities and towns. The way the grant program will work is, if you, let's say you have, what we're trying to do is give you some baseline services that will stop against those like 3 layers of threats. So I think it's like $7 per endpoint per month, which is laptop, desktop, or server per month. And that will give you those protections and control. You can add in an Office 365 or an Active Directory component that helps to track like what might be happening against your cloud accounts as well. And so there's another like add-on element with that for the nonprofit. But they're specific on the pricing. We don't plan on it going up because we're really trying to make this affordable for small businesses. But what the grant will do is kind of set you in motion with that managed detection and response 24/7 with Sentinel-1 Vigilance as the SOC and the Cyber Trust SOC as the go-to when there's like some kind of incident. There's a whole other side of this SOC program, and it's that we're training college students and community college students to be the next generation of cyber workforce in Massachusetts. And so there's a altruistic element to this too. So we're training students who are getting on-the-job training in the SOC. So there's a potential workforce there for you to hire from as well. So the grant itself is up to $25,000. Let's say you have if you have I'm trying to do the math here, but if you have 10 employees, that would be like $70 a month. What is that? 8,400. Is it 8,400 a year? Yeah, that's about right. Or $840 a year. We would provide you up to probably 30% of 33% of that as a grant, and then we'd also pay the onboarding fee for you to onboard with them. So essentially, that's how the grant works. We are building a defense industrial base facing SOC, and that's going to have more capabilities beyond the endpoint detection and response. Again, we're going out to groups like a program called Threat Locker, which is a zero trust tool, and we're going out to them and saying, give us your best pricing on this so that we can give good pricing, better than the private sector's charging for these services as well. And that's a really good tool for CMEC compliance. It helps us with probably maybe 60 or so, 70 of the 100 grant controls, so it's really, really good. Lastly, we are building out a minimum baseline of cybersecurity on our website that's a free resource for small businesses, and that's going to provide a guide path to help you, even if you want to do it by yourself without spending any money. It'll give you some policy templates you could use, because a big part of compliance is the policies that you need to have in place. So it will give you free policy templates. It will give you some guidance on like what you need to do to become more cyber resilient. And if you have any questions on any of what I talked about, feel free to let me know. We can talk after.
And no, thank you so much for breaking that down. So as you guys can see, your taxpayer dollars are hard at work. So some of the other things I wanted to talk about, obviously cybersecurity is a huge one, but for people who want to work with defense contractors like General Dynamics, I think the biggest advice I have for you is do your research. Do your research on like what we're actually building, what our programs are doing, and where does your product offering fit into there. I can't tell you how many times I get emails from people and they just say, oh, I do this. And I'm like, great, well, where do I forward your information to? We got 12,000 employees, right? So if you can help me direct the traffic, it really helps get you some visibility, right? Because Art hates it and Chris hates it when I just forward over stuff, and then they got to go and sift through and figure out where it goes. So if you guys can do the research, I think that's with any big prime. that's really gonna help you, you know, there as well. The other one is like listing your differentiators. So if you have niche capability, niche manufacturing capability, like if you can thermoform plastic, you should say that. If you can do build to print tight tolerances, you should say that. If you have certain quality assurance certifications, definitely say that. You know, things like that I think really make you stand out, because you know, if you just say I'm a machine shop, okay, well, what actually do you do? Like, what's your specialty? How does that, you know, where can you're helping me direct the traffic, right? And the other thing is, like, don't be discouraged if, like, let's say you meet me today, and don't be discouraged if something doesn't work out right away. There's always opportunities that come up. We have 9 other business units that we work with. There's opportunities there as well. You guys can go on our website and see. We make everything from business jets to tanks, to things that go boom, you know, to ships, to submarines. So there's other opportunities there. I think no connection is a bad connection. And so I've had a lot of suppliers, sometimes they come to me, it's not a right fit for us, but I've introduced them to plenty of other people, especially at like a trade show or at an event like this. So, so that's all I had. So I guess now we can open it up for questions. If you guys have questions for us, we're happy to answer them.
I'll give out more swag if you ask questions.
We also have two of our senior
Yeah.
procurement folks here from Mission Systems, so this is a great chance to ask questions. Yes, sir.
So if you're looking to break into the DoD, you don't have existing contracts like MAIR-MAC, would you recommend going and doing CMC first?
Yes.
Then getting, just a little bit chicken or egg, but definitely do that.
Yeah, I would do that, and the reason why is this, like, we require a minimum score of 90 just to share the CUI, and the thought process is, it's from a risk mitigation standpoint. If you have 90, when the CMMC requirements become final, and those assessments from the third party start taking place, your jump from 90 to 110 is pretty short. But if you're starting at ground zero and that requirement comes down, we have to flow that down to you. If you're not even ready to go, as you can see, it takes a little bit of time, right, to get everything going. So it's gonna give you a differentiator to win work, because you're gonna be ahead of everyone else who doesn't have it.
And if you don't mind sharing, we're a 9-person too. So it took about like 6 months or so working with Synagex.
Yes.
So ballpark, how much is the investment? Is that?
About 36,000 a year.
Okay.
Is just average of, yeah, we did get a grant from Mass MP, we got a $5,000 grant. But I had to rush for that, because I was behind on everything and the time was running out. I didn't know how it worked, but they all explained it to me very well. I was also starting at a -98, but I did have a lot of items on my poem, checked off.
That's, I was gonna say, is she had 4 years of experience with it previously, very strong understanding still of CMMC. Probably say we helped like educate a lot, but it didn't take a lot of effort to get, bring you up to speed on where you needed to go, and she was off and running. We got started, and so we partnered early in that and put those task lists together. Suzanne did a great job at keeping that moving forward. So always have a good resource internally that you're going to dedicate some of that time to through that process. We're seeing anywhere, if you're going to really push and have the resources, you could do it in 6-8 months. 12 to 18 is probably the average.
And I think the costs are gonna vary, right, depending on what portion of your business would be DoD versus commercial, how big is your company, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So I think don't be scared. It's worth just taking a look at and having a conversation with folks and just seeing, you know, is it worth it? But I guarantee you, if you go to like a trade show, like if you go to the Navy Gold Coast or one of the other shows, and you go to like, you know, the different booths for the primes, that's one of the big questions everyone's asking, what's your SPRS score? You know, and if somebody says, I don't even know what a SPRS score is, we're like, oh man, I need to introduce you to some folks. But yeah, it's because it's a requirement, it's coming, it's not gonna go away. Yeah.
Thank you.
And the process is gonna help strengthen you from a cybersecurity perspective, no matter what. So we've had companies that go through the assessment process and they're not going after DoD they have it in their mind, maybe someday we will, but their intent wasn't to do that. It was just to get a better understanding of what their cybersecurity posture is and what it would take to strengthen that. And it's gonna become more of the standard. The things we see in the NIST 800-171 for CMMC are similar to what insurance companies are requiring to have cyber insurance. What PCI compliance, if you deal with credit card processing. A lot of those things you're already saying you're doing to process credit cards, it's very similar to that same framework.
I have a client that makes doors and windows, door and window manufacturer, and Synagex is helping them get their CMMC certification because it's good business.
It's nice to add to the business card. I did spend a lot more though those first 4 years with all the other contracts I had to acquire. It was a nightmare, and that was probably closer to almost $200,000 those first 4 years before I found the Synagex. So it was really a long process, but I didn't do what I needed to do by finding a company that could support it. I wanted to use a local company because that's what we do as a small business. You know, we're always reaching out to our neighbors for our plating needs, you know, any outside service needs, anything at all, even from buying our supplies in the company. You know, we go to the guy, you know, right next door because we're so small. We love to support them. And I made the mistake of using someone small and really not vetting them properly. And so when they told me they had experience and they could help with other vendors, I just said, okay, great. And it turned out to be a real nightmare, to be honest, but which is why I'm just so thankful that General Dynamics was able to guide me, you know, to everybody I needed. It was huge.
Yeah, we have another supplier in another state that I referred them to their MEP center in their state. But the MEP center was too backed up and they couldn't help them in a certain amount of time. So they went out and like found their own company. And so asked us to like do a sanity check. So we literally just ran a Dun & Bradstreet and like checked some stuff. The company was like not valid in Dun & Bradstreet. They weren't even registered in the state that they said they were doing business in. So I was like, that's a huge red flag, you know, right there. So you have to be really careful with like who you pick to do business with.
And we talked about this last night. So Cyber AB, so Cyber authoritative body. So they're the organization in charge of the whole certification process. They do have a marketplace on cyberab.org that would list organizations that have some relationship with them. So we're a RPO, registered professional organization, and have practitioners that have been trained by them. Now we have certified professionals, so getting certifications by them, it would list all that information about the company you'd like to work with.
We have a couple minutes, we have to wrap up.
Okay.
So probably time for one last question.
Would you say like going through a consortium would be another good avenue to work with GD or Prime, or do you have any advice on that?
I think it depends. You know, we do have some developmental programs. Like we can talk offline and see, because I know your name is on a list that Lily actually gave me. So yeah, in terms of tech. So yeah, it's different for tech, I think, than it is for somebody who's actually like making product. Just a little bit of a different process, but we can definitely sync up offline. Yeah.
I'm just gonna add one more thing. So
Yes.
if you're not ready for CMMC, if you're not really looking at that, but you still wanna take advantage of like the state services, you can do that, because working with Lily Fitzgerald from Center for Advanced Manufacturing, we only have about $1.1 million in our budget. That's why we won't pay for 3 years. We'll pay for a whole, like a third of the contract. But she gave us $300,000 for manufacturing alone, so it doesn't have to be CMMC manufacturers. It's just manufacturers in Massachusetts. So we're not just trying to help the defense industrial base. We're trying to help all manufacturers in Massachusetts. So if you're interested, you can apply to that too, without the CMMC.
I think we could work with GD, but we're also getting requirements from semiconductor industries and other industries even to the point where they are requiring us to purchase cyber insurance, which we have, but it's not just the defense industry, the intellectual property everywhere, all the companies right now are worried about intellectual property, and they're kind of looking at the supplier base to see how you protect my property, my drawings, my stuff, my documents and so forth, so.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing.
I don't know if you guys get it in the manufacturing space, but I know in the healthcare space, they were like small manufacturers who were working with larger companies like Bristol Myers Squibb, and they had to fill out like a 178 question survey on their cybersecurity thing, so that could come to manufacturing, but those policies that we're talking about, like if you have those in place, that will help you answer those questions, and sometimes they ask you for the actual policy, and you'll have those available, so we're trying to model it like that for healthcare and for manufacturing.
I do wanna just add real quick, I know we have to wrap up, but they provide templates. So what is a 200-page, for instance, system security plan, you think how, I don't even know what that means, what am I doing? They're very, very helpful, with providing all of that stuff, and you just pop it in your own information, your own company information, so it's very, very helpful. It feels daunting, but they really help you out. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Well,
Pretty
thank you
stuff.
guys for your time today and for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
If anybody needs connection with the folks here to grab one of my cards, just drop me a quick email and I'll be there.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
No, yeah, you're sort of slow.
Yeah, right, I did.
Yeah, they're
in 27 years.
Okay.
No, thank you very much. Thank you. I would love that. Are you going to stay home?
Okay.
when you need a sir.
Or do you guys want to go get some? Yeah, no, that's not. Oh, okay.
You didn't give me any information for this event, so I don't know.
Next time. All right. Bye, guys.
Last year, Kelsey forwarded me like the agenda. I had all the guys, and this year I'm like, I'm just showing up. I don't know.
All the people.
That's all you gotta do.
All right, well, enjoy
Yeah.
your next session.
Two sessions.
I know, I'll try.
Two sessions.
Two sessions, yeah, the next one's in 10 minutes.
Yeah. Do you want to sit down?
Yeah.
No, not really. I'm gonna be in the car for 2 hours later. I'm probably gonna sit down and eat that when I leave here.
Yeah.
I just have to,
Does it
if
all.
I can, see
Probably.
Go to where? Telling me, are you treating me to lunch?
Yeah, I don't know. If they offer those.
You still have company card, right? You haven't taken that away from me yet.
That's a fair point. I think it was hourly. So PCA started asking me about that. They're like, these people have the art.
You gotta get,
You can put limits.
yeah, but the bank, like Adams and, you know, for sure, every bank does, but they had like specific, pay cards, like they were like temporary cards. They weren't even linked to like your account.
I'm not that crazy. I just put limits around.
They did it for, they did it for me.